Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 230 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today I am excited to talk with you about how to overcome a revenue plateau in your consulting business. Obviously, I'm not excited if you have a revenue plateau and you've hit that, but I am excited to share with you how to overcome that. And you might be surprised because when I dive into the details here, I'm going to start off with defining what a revenue plateau is. And you might be thinking right now, as you're listening to the beginning of this episode, oh, I haven't yet hit a revenue plateau. Believe me, you will at some point in your business if you haven't, but you might actually have hit a plateau without realizing it. So I'm going to tell you what that means here in a minute so that you can look out for it in your business and recognize a plateau, even if it is not as obvious, as it sounds. So that's what we're here today to talk about, how to overcome a revenue plateau in your consulting business. All of us hit them. It's not a problem unless you stay there. And I don't want you to stay there. So that's why we have this episode here for you today. Before we dive in, I thought I'd share a slight update. If you've been following the podcast or any of the weekly emails that I send out, you will know that I have developed 3 physical products. They are complements to the work I do here on the podcast, to the work I do with my one-on-one clients, to the book I wrote. And those 3 products, physical products, are a quarterly business planner. So it's designed for business owners specifically. There's an 8-step framework built into the planner that helps you to set and achieve goals in a way that you haven't before. So I cannot wait for you to see that. Then I've created something called the 100-Day Business Brain Guided Journal. So it's a guided journal, walks you through 100 days of transforming your mindset from wherever it is you are right now. Perhaps you're really lingering in a lot of old employee type mindset, or you're lingering in what I like to call consultant mindset versus business owner mindset. Those are 2 different things, and you're operating in 2 different capacities in your business. But a lot of times we get stuck in leaning on the consultant side of it and not thinking about the business owner side of it and what our mindset would be and how it needs to be different in those 2 ways. So that's what the 100-Day Business Brain is intended to do, is to help you to transform the way you're thinking so that you can set yourself up for success to achieve the goals and ultimately the business of your dreams. And then finally, I built a 1-page, it's called the project map. And it's a 1-pager. It helps you to build out all of your projects just on a simple 1-pager. It's a tear sheet type of a product. And to keep those projects top of mind, so often we might put them into a digital planner, a digital tool like Todoist or something like that. And then it's so hard to see it and to really think about it. And so I built out this desk pad, which can work very well, by the way, in conjunction with a digital tool. I use both in my own business. And the purpose of this desk pad is to help you have a 1-pager for your project plans and to incorporate not only the plan itself, but very commonly overlooked strategies to help set you up for success. And that's what I've built into that project map as well, in terms of mindset and some strategy that oftentimes we overlook when we're planning our projects. So anyway, that's a brief description. If you're not aware of this project that I've been working on for now almost a year, it's been 11 months. Yes, I thought it would be, I signed up for a 6-week sprint. It has now been 11 months, but definitely my goals transformed significantly from where I started. So you can go back and listen to the episode on productizing, adding physical products to your business. So I won't go into too much more detail here, but I wanted to update you on all of this because I have great news, which is the products are on their way. They have left the manufacturer. I fully paid the manufacturer, which is really exciting. And now they are partially on a ship, partially waiting to be on a ship and partially on a plane. The ones on the plane will obviously get here much faster, but it does take some time for Amazon to in process them. So they are on their way. I can't wait to share more with you. At the time of this recording, it's the end of July. So I'm hoping that by the end of August, and I don't like hope as a strategy, but in this case, it does require a lot of hope. I'm hoping that by the end of August, they will be on Amazon and you'll be able to grab them to finish the year strong. So, anyway, a bit of an update there for you on the physical products that I've been building, and I cannot wait for you to get your hands on them. The other thing I've been working on, in addition to my core business, love working with one-on-one clients, helping them to achieve their business goals. That is just what I love doing the most out of anything, working with people directly to impact them. But I've also been spending a bit of time this summer also with my kids. Obviously, they've been swimming, and the oldest just finished his state championships, Colorado State swimming championships, and he finished in the top 5 of all the breaststrokers in the state. So exciting. He also finished, I think it was a 6th or 7th in the 200 IM and top 15 or so in the 100 flies. Lots of fun things. And then this coming weekend, the other two, who are 11 and 10, have their state meet. So excited for that. And then lastly, I'm going to Dallas next week because we have Junior Olympics for water polo. So a great way to finish out the summer. And they go back to school, and then I ramp back up my schedule, reopen my consultation calendar. So if you're waiting for that, it'll be reopened on August 4th or 5th. Now I can't remember. We'll put the exact date in the show notes for you. Okay. So that's a little bit of an update, but let's dive into this episode. I want to talk with you about your revenue plateau. So let me walk you through the agenda so you know what to expect on this episode. We're going to first start off and talk about what is a revenue plateau. It might sound very obvious, but there's one scenario of a revenue plateau that is not as obvious, and I want to make sure you're not overlooking that. And then we're going to dive into the top 5 causes of revenue plateaus that I see over and over, time and time again, when I'm working with business owners who have hit plateaus. And then we'll talk through how to break those root causes so that you can ultimately push through the plateau so that you're able to generate more revenue. And then I'll give you an example so we can bring this to life, so you can see what it actually looks like to understand what the causes are for a plateau, and then what you can be doing about the plateau in real life, and also what doesn't work. So that will hopefully help make it more tangible. And then we'll wrap it up with the next steps to put this episode into action. All right. One thing to share with you, the companion resource that goes with this episode, if you haven't taken it in a while, is the Consultant's Business Health Check. This is a 14-point health check that walks you through a 360-degree view of your business and helps you to identify the areas that are performing really well so that you can make sure those systems in your business are, running smoothly and that you're emphasizing them. And then also so that you can identify the underperforming systems so that you can start addressing those as well. That will help you to make sure that you've got a really solid plan for the remainder of the year. So you can find that at icassessment.com, which is the 2 letters IC for independent consultant, then the word assessment.com. Okay, that will help you to identify where you may have hit a plateau of some sort in your business and prioritize what will move the needle for you. Now, let's dive into the agenda for today. So first, let's talk about, what does a revenue plateau look like? What is a revenue plateau? Again, it sounds very obvious. The most obvious answer is that it's roughly the same revenue year over year, plus or minus a little bit. Roughly that you're staying in that same range of revenue year over year. That would be the most obvious definition of what is a revenue plateau. But the other one that I want to point out to you that you might be overlooking is the scenario with a revenue plateau where you are basically making the same or close to the same as what you made in corporate. That's another way to look at your revenue plateau. Have you basically recreated your corporate compensation? And for you, it might be you've recreated your corporate salary, or maybe you've recreated your total compensation from corporate if there was a big difference. But that's another form of a revenue plateau. And I often see consultants overlooking this or not even realizing that they're doing this inadvertently. Why would you be recreating the same amount of compensation that you had made in corporate when you have more costs on your side now? Of course, you have some deductions as well from a business perspective, but really think about that. There's not a good business reason why you're making the same amount that you made in corporate. And so I want to point that out to you because that's what we're going to talk about partially when we start talking about addressing this revenue plateau. So those are the couple of scenarios that are very common. And the one that is often overlooked, which is basically recreating your corporate compensation. So when we think about those scenarios of revenue plateaus that you've hit, and maybe you've hit both of them, that's very common, right? Where you're having the same amount of revenue plus or minus year over year, and it's around the same range as what you had made in corporate. So let's talk about why would you be doing that? What are the 5 most common causes that I see of revenue plateaus for consultants? And might not be surprised to hear me say the first one is that you don't believe it's realistic for you to make more money. That's the answer to that question of why would it be that you started a business and just coincidentally, the business makes around the same amount of money that you made in corporate? It doesn't come down to, oh, that's just what the market will bear, or that's, roughly how much consultants make. That's not the answer. I see wide ranges of how much consultants make, when I'm looking behind the scenes at their businesses. Some are making less than 100K, others are making over 1 million. What's the difference? It has to do with what you believe is realistic for you. And what the other term that I love attributing to this is the money thermometer that you've established for yourself. What is that thermometer? If you think about that thermometer, I think it's the United Way, especially if you're in the US and they're doing fundraisers. They set a thermometer of, this is how much we want to raise. I think it's a thermometer. Hopefully it is. But you know what I'm talking about. We've got this whole goal and it's a vertical chart, right? And then as they start raising money, then they're filling it all in. And right now, your top limit is what you're used to making, most likely. And a lot of times that comes from corporate. And so that's what is the number one cause of a revenue plateau is what you believe is realistic for you, what you set that top range of your thermometer to. And that's what you end up making, not because not making more isn't possible. It's because you don't believe it's realistic for you. So that's the first cause of a revenue plateau. The second cause of the revenue plateau, I'll describe it as you haven't conceptualized what it will look like to make more money. You don't have a Creek strategy or an actionable path. A lot of times I find consultants have some of this. They know, okay, I want to sell, 3 retainers a month. If we just kept the maths, a simple scenario, I want to have 3 retainer clients at any given time. And I want to charge each of them 20K. So those are 60K months, and I'll take a few months off of the year. So that's a 600K business. I oftentimes will hear consultants tell me kind of that level of detail, but what does that actually mean on a day-to-day basis? Can you fit all that work in? Do you have enough capacity to fit in all that work? Do you believe you can support those clients in a valuable way? That's where a lot of times I find that there are big holes in what you actually want versus what you know it will look like. And so that's the second reason why you might be hitting a revenue plateau. You haven't really figured out the devil in the details of how you're going to hit that number, a new number beyond your current revenue plateau. And then the third reason or third cause of a revenue plateau is you think you're going to have to sacrifice too much to make more money. And that might hurt a little. I know for me, I love trying to do everything, right? I don't worry logically about sacrificing too much, but subconsciously, these are the trade-offs that we think about. I hear this so often. I don't have any more time. I can't make more money. this is the key one. If I make more money, I'm going to burn out. I'm going to be too busy. I'm going to feel less flexibility. And that's why I started this business in the first place, like those kinds of things. The other one that you might not realize that you think you're going to have to endure if you get more money, you make more money, is the emotional side of this, the rejection, the disappointment, the frustration, the self doubt. In your mind, this is a cost benefit analysis at the end of the day. In your mind, the perceived cost of what it will take to make more money and to push past your revenue plateau, which, by the way, the revenue plateau right now is all known, right? You know exactly what it looks like to create the amount of money you're creating, and you don't know what it looks like to create more money. So your brain, is out of your comfort zone. Your brain is creating all of these concerns that you may not even be aware of. You logically want more money. You logically know you're capable of earning more money. You logically know that you provide so much value to your clients that your services are worth more money. But at the end of the day, your brain is worried about the trade-off, the cost benefit of the trade-off of what that's going to mean, that you're going to have to sacrifice too much to get that money. And it's not true. And we'll talk more about how to overcome this. It doesn't have to be true, but that's the constant calculation that your brain is making on your behalf, usually not to your benefit. And so you want to be really, really aware of what is it that is creating that potential friction for you about what you might have to sacrifice, whether it's emotionally, you're going to have to feel more rejection, you're going to have to feel more disappointment and be okay with that, or whether it's time. In your mind, you think you have to sacrifice more time. You don't, but you might think that. And so getting really clear about what your brain is calculating as those potential sacrifices that might not make it worth it to make more money. And therefore, you just stay where you're at in that known quantity. The fourth cause that I often see with creating a revenue plateau is that you're stuck blaming external circumstances. And this one might hit home a little hard. So often we try to find logical reasons why we're getting the results that we're getting. And you're a smart person. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a consultant. You're a smart person. You could find and justify these things all day long. The market is so volatile right now. There's a lot more consultants on the market than there used to be. You could list out 1,000 different reasons why, the external conditions are limiting your ability to make more money. But I'll tell you right now that blaming any external circumstance is not to your benefit. And we'll talk more about how to overcome that here in a second. But notice for yourself, because this gets really sneaky. A lot of times we think, well, this is just how it is. I'm just explaining and describing the market conditions, when in fact, really that's a justification and a rationalization. We'll talk more about that here in a moment. And then finally, the fifth cause of revenue plateau that I most often see is pricing. You haven't raised your prices, or you haven't shifted your pricing strategy out of hourly based or even day based type pricing. And that is also creating a plateau for you because you only have so many hours in the day, right? And when your effective rate for those hours is lower, then of course you're going to stay making around the same amount of money. Occasionally, it might be one of these elements that you can tackle and then break through the revenue plateau. But most of the time, what I see is a combination of 2, 3, 4, or all 5 of them that need to be tackled in order to break through the revenue plateau and truly, create a brand new plateau at a much higher level. So those are the 5 most common causes that I see with respect to revenue plateaus and why we're having them. Now let's talk about how to break through them. So now that you know the reasons and the root causes, let's talk about what do you do to break through them? And then I'll give you a specific example here in a minute as well. So of course, there are 5 of them, right? Let's tackle each one and think about how do we address that root cause. The first thing that I want to say first, though, before I go through all 5 of them and how to address them, is that this is normal. It's very common to hit revenue plateaus. We all do. What doesn't have to be the case is that you stay there. You don't have to hit a revenue plateau and then just stay there and think, well, in order to get past that, I'm going to have to hire a bunch of people. I don't want to hire them. And so I'm just going to stay where I'm at. You don't have to do that. You have so many other levers. So we want to really look at this for you and your business, not from a place of judgment or regret, from a place of problem solving. All right. So with that, let's tackle them one by one. The first root cause was all about, do you actually believe you're capable of making more money? And again, you might, respond quickly to say, oh, of course, Melissa, I do believe that. But when I work with consultants and we start peeling back the layers, I almost always find the answer is no, I don't actually believe that. And so you want to work on expanding what I call your possibility thinking. It just so happens that this is one of the chapters in the 100-day business brain, a whole 2 weeks focused on possibility thinking. So little teaser there. When the business brain journal is ready, you can go grab that and work on that piece of it. But in the meantime, you want to be looking at that possibility thinking. You want to be growing the way you think of yourself and what you're capable of. And what that looks like is getting really clear with yourself, whether it's using journaling or some form of visualization or building out some model for yourself, but getting to the place where you can see this is doable, this is possible, this is something I'm capable of. It might take a bit to get there, but it's not a stretch. I am a person who is capable of making, whatever X amount of revenue is beyond the plateau. That's what it looks like to expand your possibility thinking. The second is to get clear. Oh, I should say before we move on from the possibility thinking, we'll put the link in the show notes. You can sign up for the wait lists for that business brain journal if it's something that you're interested in using to expand your possibility thinking. But I also just gave you ways you can do that in lieu of the journal. But if you want to be on the wait list, we'll put it in there for you. Okay, so the first is that you want to be actively working to expand your, what we'll call your possibility, the way you're thinking about your personal possibilities. The second way to break through your revenue plateau is to get clear. What is your strategy for breaking through the plateau? So that means you're clear on things like, what are you selling? What kind of services are you selling? What is your average contract value? How many of those contracts, and it could be multiple, right? You could be selling multiple services. They each have their own average contract value. How many of each of those are you planning to sell? And then how does that all add up to a revenue goal that's beyond your plateau? And then how does that work with your utilization? That's a key that I often see is missing, is we build up this idea of, okay, I'm going to sell this amount of services for this average contract value, but then we don't actually see how it's going to fit into our schedule on a day-to-day basis. And I'm not talking about waving your hands at this and saying, well, I know I can figure it out, it'll work. I'm saying you're sitting down with something like an Excel spreadsheet and you're building out exactly what your utilization plan is going to look like and how you would be working with the number of clients you want to be working with at their average contract value in a way that helps you reach the revenue goal that you have that's beyond your plateau. Very clear, getting very clear. So you can see it. It's tangible for you. It's realistic. You can see it on a piece of paper, and you're combining that with the first one, which is the possibility thinking, where you are actively working. This means on a weekly basis or even a daily basis, you're actively working to help yourself in your mind see that you're someone who's capable of bringing this business model to life that you created, on the piece of paper. The third step here of breaking through the revenue plateau and addressing those root causes is to dig into your objections. What are you thinking, under the covers that is holding you back from achieving the goal that you set, from achieving a goal beyond your revenue plateau? It goes back to what I was saying a little bit ago about, number one, you might be thinking logically, I can hit this revenue number. I'll figure out a way to work with these clients. But at the same time, your brain may be creating friction for you, saying subconsciously to yourself, when you make more money, you're not going to have enough time. You don't have enough time to work with the clients. You're going to have to sacrifice too much of your flexibility. You're going to get back into the corporate grind that you were in. You don't want that. So it's constantly that naysayer in your brain trying to talk you out of the status quo. You want to know whatever that internal dialogue is and be very aware of it and debunk it for yourself. You want to ask yourself questions like, what do you think you're going to have to give up when you make more money? What, if anything, feels conflicted or uncertain to you about earning significantly more? Get really clear with yourself. What do you think you're going to have to feel in order to create more money? Are you going to have to feel more rejection? Are you going to have to feel more disappointment? Are you going to have to feel more self-doubt? And how willing are you to feel those feelings? These are valid questions to ask yourself to understand where is the resistance happening in your brain that's holding you back from making more money and keeping you at some form of a plateau. And then number 4, we talked about blaming those external conditions, which is really justifying to make yourself feel better. We all do it. The concept here to help you break through the revenue plateau is to take 100% responsibility, that you can create results for yourself regardless of the market, that you can create results for yourself beyond your revenue plateau, no matter what's happening in the industry. And giving yourself that concept of an and. Yes, the economy is rapidly changing. Yes, there's a lot of volatility right now. Don't argue with things that may be a losing argument in your mind, but add to that. Yes, the economy is rapidly changing right now. And I know there are 5 consulting clients who would want to work with me this year, who would pay me, $100,000 each, something to that effect for you. 5 consulting clients. Or for you, maybe it's 10 consulting clients. We're talking about a handful. Maybe it's 1 or 2. We're talking about a handful here, not thousands and thousands. You can go find those clients. You can take 100% responsibility. You don't have to rely on or be stuck by any external thing that is holding you back. Look and see, where are you abdicating your responsibilities to some external situation, and reverse course and take responsibility for it, and then unlock your ability to problem solve as a result of that. And then finally, look at your pricing, raise your prices, and also raise the value, whether that's perceived value, actual value, likely both of those things. Raise your prices and raise your value so that you're able to make more money with the type of engagements that you're selling and ultimately break through a revenue plateau. So those are the 5 areas that you want to be looking at. Of course, they cover mindset, they cover strategy, they cover execution. You want to be looking at all of those 5 areas and addressing them so that you can move past your revenue plateau and make more money than you've ever made this year. It's possible for you. You might say to me, well, this year is such a challenging year in the market. So many companies are down in revenue. You're not so many companies. You're a solo, nimble, creative, innovative consultant. And you can figure out, and I can assure you there are a lot of consultants who are making more money than they've ever made this year. It is possible for you too. So go look at these 5 areas and figure out how to break through your own revenue plateau, whether it's you making the same money year over year, plus or minus, or that you've recreated your corporate compensation in some way. And let's break through that plateau for you this year. Don't wait until next year. Let's make it happen this year. All right, let me give you an example, and then we'll wrap up with the way to put these steps into action for your business. I want to share the example of Jane, which is a real person, although I've changed her name. Jane, here's what her business looked like before we implemented this approach for her that I just described to you. Before, she was making around plus or minus around 250 every year. And she had set a goal repeatedly to make 400K and was not hitting it. And this had gone on for a couple of years where she just would set the 400K and then fall short. And so what she had tried to do to solve this problem was working on clarifying her service offers, working on her ideal client profile, that down, trying to drive more inbound leads through content and speaking, some referrals. She even raised her prices, but she had addressed two of the causes that we had talked about a moment ago. She had addressed getting clearer and raising the prices. And that seemed like the right strategy, but she just basically kept creating that 250. I think the year that she made those changes, she maybe made 260, so an extra 10K. After 2 or 3, 4 years of this 250K scenario, she started worrying that this was it, that this is just what the market segment she was in would bear. And she just wasn't capable, and her business model wasn't capable of making more than that. As we started working together and started addressing the other areas of her plateau, this is how she was able to break through the plateau and increase to $360,000 in the year. And that involved keeping what she had already done, the things that she had already implemented, the clarified offers, the more specific ideal client profile, the inbound lead generation, the new pricing. And then on top of that, what she did was worked on those other areas that I just explained to you, expanding her possibility thinking, looking at and finding ways to expand what she believes is possible for her, what she believes she can accomplish, how much money she believes that she could make as her new norm, and moving it past that essentially, 20 to 25K per month level. That was a key aspect of this. And implementing that as a routine for herself, as part of her business owner routine 2 or 3 times a week. And then next, she started addressing and uncovering her objections to making more money. I know on the surface, it sounds like, well, who would have an objection to making more money? But we all do at some level. Because again, we think in our mind that ultimately making more money is going to create a sacrifice of some sort. And so then are we willing to take on that sacrifice? And our brain subconsciously is just doing all these calculations. And so for her, she realized that her main impediment to making more money was her worry that it would create too much complication in her life, that she would have to give up some of her flexibility, that she would be beholden to a lot more client, schedules, that the money she was making was good enough. When she said that out loud, she cringed, but she's, acknowledged that in her mind, she realized that she was thinking, this is good enough and it's not worth it to make more. So of course, if you're thinking that way, you would be hitting like she was, you would be hitting a plateau. And then finally, so she started tackling that objection. She started looking at, okay, how can I make more money and have more flexibility? She started asking different questions of herself and started solving this problem in a different way because she was aware of it now. It wasn't just some kind of subcurrent running in her brain that she wasn't really realizing was there. And then ultimately, she worked on that concept of 100% responsibility, where she started picking apart her concerns about her market and would they pay her pricing, and started looking at where was she rationalizing what was keeping her stuck? Where was she focused on external conditions and blaming them or attributing, let's call it that. I don't even think it's a blaming really. It's so much more subtle than a blaming for most of us. It's so much more subtle. It's more of an attributing to, well, it makes sense that I would just keep making this amount of money because I work in the nonprofit sector. And so that's all that would bear, for example. So for Jane, she was able to really uncover and understand where she was rationalizing and blaming those external conditions, like the market, like the ups and downs and uncertainty of what's going on in the world, and to realize that she does have control. Despite those macroeconomic conditions, we could agree that that's the case. Despite those, she started to uncover all the different ways that she does have control over her own results, and that those external conditions don't need to change in order for her to break through her plateau, which, as I mentioned, she did. So after combining the work she had already done with raising her pricing, getting more clear on her plan, and building out an inbound lead generation approach, and then adding on to that the possibility thinking, the understanding of what her brain was thinking that was trying to keep her in the status quo and overcoming that and taking 100% responsibility for her results, that's where she was able to then break through the plateau, as you can do too, using what I just have described to you on this episode, and was able to start generating those 30K months as her new norm. She was being so much more bold and willing to feel rejected, willing to feel discouraged, willing to experiment with new things that some worked and some didn't, and started thinking of herself differently, started thinking of herself as a 30K per month business owner instead of a 20 to 25K per month business owner, and as a peer to her clients instead of a vendor or a subordinate to her clients, and being able to focus on how she can have more money and more time. So often we think we need to choose between the two. She started really investigating and getting clear for herself on how she could have both more money and more free time. So that's the example of how Jane put what I described to you, those 5 steps, into action for her business. And I want you to be able to take that as a tangible example to apply it to your own business. So as we wrap up today's episode, to put this into action, the first question I have for you is, where have you hit a plateau in your business? Where have you hit a plateau from a revenue perspective in your business? Is it a clear, simple math, or is it something that is more subtle that you might not have even realized, where you've recreated what you were making in corporate in some form or fashion? And then investigate the root causes, starting with those 5 that I shared with you. We'll put the list of those in the show notes so that you can go back and reference them. There's a link here in your podcast players so that you can go link over to that and then be able to investigate those root causes for yourself and put this into action for your business so that you can continue moving forward and break through that revenue plateau this month. You can break through it this month, this quarter, this year. You don't have to wait until we have a fresh year to start. Do it now. And then finally, if you're game for it, if you get value out of this podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a rating and review. That helps other consultants find this resource and spreads the word so that more of us can be successful in doing what we're doing as independent consultants and really living this life that we want to be living on our own terms. So if you're game for it, leave a rating and review. That will help others find it. And I appreciate you. So many of you tell me that you tell your peers and your friends and your colleagues about the podcast. And I greatly appreciate that word of mouth as well. So keep that up as well. Thank you so much. And I will see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.